What is your earliest memory of your family being in racing?
My earliest memory of us being in racing was we grew up in Rolla, Missouri.
Yeah.
So would probably be, 1967, 68. To this day in my dirt car, Steve,
Yeah.
if I'm sitting in my dirt car, I have a decal right here. And it's a decal of my mom and dad and me as a little boy reaching up. After the races, they used to give out the trophies.
Uh-huh.
They didn't give them out when you won the race. They'd wait for the race to get over. So that decal is a great reminder. I put it in my car to remind me why I raced. So Rolla, Missouri, late 60s.
You were the youngest of three brothers.
Yes.
How would you describe yourself as the youngest brother?
So
Now remember, I know your two brothers.
yeah, so I can't bullshit you.
Here we go.
So you're right. I am the youngest of three brothers. Of course, Rusty, Mike, and myself. I'm 7 years younger than Rusty, and I'm 4 years younger than Mike. They took me. They took me to a therapist in school because they said I seeked attention. I said, well, I could have saved you a lot of time and told you that. What's funny, later in life, Darrell Waltrip told me, yeah, I seek attention too. But I'd say the difference between myself and my brothers is that I'm a little more free-spirited, fun-loving. Rusty and Mike get very focused, very serious, as to where I got no problem saying, hey, I love you, Rick. Hey, I love you, Steve. Rusty, him and Schrader and that bunch, they were born in the 50s. They ain't going to ever say that. They're a tough bunch. And so, yeah, I'm just a little more free-spirited. I want everybody to get along. I'm more of a mediator, and Rusty and Mike are more business types.
Right.
Let's get right to the point. And, so I'd say that's really the difference.
Well, what was it like with these two? I mean, you guys are growing up, your siblings.
Yeah.
You may have been 7 years younger.
Yeah.
But you still had interaction.
Oh, yeah.
So what was all that like?
How would Mike and Rusty describe you as a kid brother?
Yeah, that's what I'm getting at.
How would they just...
Did you get beat up?
Well, I tell you, hey, I got a lot of stories about growing up together. Rusty and Mike were always fighting. They love each other, but Rusty and Mike always fought, and I don't know why. I remember Rusty and Mike getting into a fight at our house in Arnold, Missouri, off Vogel Road, and they were going at it, and Mom grabbed the water hose because they was fighting in the backyards, and she started spraying. And then I remember them getting in a fight in the living room, and we had a broom, and Mom grabbed a broom and started beating with it. Stop, boys, stop. And I don't really know why they fought when they were really young. But anyway, what would they say about me? Well, I've heard them talk about me, and Mike would say, Kenny's always off doing his own thing.
Yeah.
Rusty never liked my laugh. The problem with my laugh is it's natural. And I guess it seems like it's made, but it's not. My laugh aggravated my brother. I'm sure he still aggravates him to this day, but he tolerates me. and we all love each other. We truly do. But, what do they say about me? Mike always says I'm off doing my own deal. Rusty doesn't like my laugh, but I know they love me. I just really think they both look at me like that. I think they both look at me as he's off. And what's funny about that is that all I did was help them, work for them. So like when Mike started racing, I was I would like to say I was a big thing in Mike's career, early his career, because you have to remember, I'm a fabricator mechanic first. Mm-hmm. Okay, then I became a race car driver. So I always worked and built Mike's race cars. And then I did the same thing with Rusty. I built and worked on Rusty's race car, drove the hauler, slept in the same beds with my brothers, I loved them with all my life. But, then, time moved on, but that's what I think they would say about me. I was just off doing my own thing. And that's odd that they would say that because I'm 110% all them.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay.
What was school like for you? Were you a fairly decent student, or were you more concerned with getting out of school and going to work at the race shop?
Class clown 1981.
Really?
Didn't mean to win that.
That's hard.
I didn't mean to win that. I just did. For I always tell people to this day, and I dream this up. I said, don't confuse my happiness with being silly. I'm not silly. I'm happy. So in school, I was a lover. I called myself a frock. I wasn't a jock, and I wasn't a freak. I just kind of fit in with all of them. I had buddies over here smoking dope. had buddies over here playing baseball and football. I kind of was just right in the middle. But you were right, Rick, about one thing. I felt like I was wasting my time in school because I knew exactly what I was going to do. I was going racing. And I'll never forget, man, I missed a lot of days, I think in 11th or 12th grade. And they were going to hold me back. They were going to make me repeat 11th or 12th grade. And I had to go to this council meeting. There was the superintendent, the principal, all these teachers and educators. And I feel like I was like right here, I'm at this table, and there was 3 people down this way, 3 people down this way. And I told them, I said, please don't hold me back. I said, I know what I'm going to do in my life. I'm going to be in racing. I'm going to be a race car driver. I'm going to be a crew chief, a mechanic. I don't smoke dope. I don't drink beer. The only reason I missed all these days of school was because I was racing. We were running USAC up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. We'd get back at 4 in the morning. I'd barely make it to school. And I never abused school. I was always there when I could be there. I never just took off school. My mom would beat my butt. You're going to school. It's funny because I remember me and Mom would stay up watching the Johnny Carson show. And she'd say, all right, Kenny, you can watch Johnny Carson with me, but you better not give me any problems getting up in the morning. Yeah, that's what she'd say to me.
Now, at that point, did you already had a career in racing in mind? Were you going to be a driver, a crew chief, a fabricator? What goal did you have in mind at that point?
Always wanted to be a race car driver. For some reason, got stuck, kind of like stalemate. I remember vividly, back in the 70s, there was this, and I know you guys remember it too, there was that crazy gas shortage. People were lined up around the block, and it was, I don't remember anything as dramatic as that growing up, that, we weren't going to have any more gas. And the lines were crazy. And I remember my dad saying to me, Kenny, we don't have any money for you to race. It's economy's bad and this and that. And it wasn't that I was looking for my dad to give me anything. I was looking for somebody to help me put a race car together, whether it be a hobby car. And I'll never forget trying to get some money to just get a go-kart. I called my Uncle Gary up. Never forget it. I know exactly where I was. And my Uncle Gary is a successful businessman, not a millionaire or anything like that. Probably got $1 million now. But I called Uncle Gary, and I said, Uncle Gary, I said, I really want to try to race. I said, could I please, maybe it was $800, which was a lot of money. And maybe it wasn't that much, but he told me no, And I think Uncle Gary looked at us as a bunch of rednecks. The Wallace family is small, but, my Uncle Gary, which, my dad's brother over here, very studious guy. And my dad over here was kind of a rebel. And, our family, we were the type of place where you rolled up to our house, and out next to the garage was all these, this sheet metal and junk, and we were building race cars. So, I think I was a good kid in school. I wanted to race. Knew I wanted to race, and it was harder than hell for me to get racing. And I'm a late bloomer. You know, I mean, I didn't start racing until I was 22 years. No, was I? No, I forgot how old I was, but it was late. So I was born in '63, and my very first year was '86. So how old was I?
Driving anything.
Anything.
Really?
Well, hold on. 1982, I ran the Illinois Street Stock State Championship in Springfield, Illinois.
Yeah.
100 something cars, and I won. But that was it. So I'm born in 1963, and I really start racing in 1986. 63, 73.
23.
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah. Yeah, so stop and think about what a late bloomer I was. And I remember coming down here and me and Felix Sabatas talking about how old I was I think I was 29 years old when I started cup racing. So I was kind of like a hairy Gant. I was a late bloomer. Yeah.
As Rusty progressed up the ladder and eventually made it to Winston Cup, did you stay back home in Missouri, or did the family basically follow him to North Carolina? How did that work?
Yeah, I know the timeline. So, crazy timeline. Quick story. We go to Jefferson, Georgia in 1983 to run a short track race. About the same time, Cliff Stewart gets a hold of Rusty to drive that '88 Gatorade car. And at the exact same time, Joe Ruttman calls me up. No, he don't call me up. I see him at the McDonald's in Jefferson, Georgia. So Joe Ruttman knew me real good because he saw me working on Rusty's cars in USAC. You know, AJ Foyt, all these great racers. You got to remember, USAC was big back then. You know, NASCAR was big, but USAC was pretty big back then because we're running against Joe Ruttman, AJ Foyt, you know, all these legendary names. So Joe Ruttman saw me as a tire changer, a mechanic as a young kid. So 1983, Jefferson, Georgia, at the McDonald's, Joe Ruttman says, would you come to move to Charlotte, North Carolina and be one of our crew members? Jake Elder's the crew chief. And then all of a sudden, Rusty goes, I just got a phone call from Cliff Stewart. I'm going to take this. We literally came down together. Okay? Literally came down together. Now, I stayed for 1 year, moved back to St. Louis, okay, to start my racing career, so to speak. And then Rusty never left. But I went back to start racing. And I started racing 86, 87, 88. So there's a year in there where I worked for my uncle's company, 85. And so Rusty and myself came down together. I mean, literally pickup truck the car. I came south on 77. He kept going, you know, west on 40. And he went up to, you know, up there. And so, yeah, that's how it started.
At what point did you feel ready to take on a Busch Series ride?
Wow, great question.
Yeah.
When did I feel ready to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I never felt ready. And this is an accurate story. As tough as Rusty is and as tough as Mike is, they love me. Mm-hmm. Rusty called me. So I started running ASA on my own. Okay. Started, you know, 1986, 87, 88. And Rusty was always in communication with Dick Trickle. So my nickname's Herman. So Rusty would call Trickle and say, how's Herman doing? Because Dick Trickle was my tutor. Because Rusty was gone. He was down here.
Yeah.
So if you know, there's a couple of Don Millers. So there's Don Miller, you know, who owns Shamrock Motors now up in Winston-Salem. But then there's the Don Miller, our Don Miller, who worked for Penske. My brother Rusty drove a handful of Busch Grand National races for Don Miller, who owns Shamrock Motors right now, builds motors for Toyota. Kind of on the down low, but that's what he does right now. So that was Cox Treated Lumber. So I get this phone call October of 1988 from Rusty. And Rusty goes, Herman, do you want to run the Busch Grand National Series? I'm like, what? Because right now,
sure.
I almost think I'm in NASCAR because I'm running ASA, and I'm racing. Now remember, 1986, 87, 88.
Wow.
I'm racing Mark Martin. I'm racing Dick Trickle, Bob Seneca, Mike Eddy. I mean, to me, these are gods. So I'm like, my Lord, yes. So Rusty, in the end, we were going to put a deal together with Don Miller, and it just didn't work out. So Cox Treated Lumber went with Rusty. We went to Lake Wiley, South Carolina, put a team together. David Ift was our crew chief, and it was literally Rusty calling me up and thinking about me. And one day I asked Rusty, I said, why did you start this Busch Grand National team for me? He says, I want to pay you back for all the years you helped me out.
How about that?
Yeah, how about that? Tough guy.
Yeah.
And, in other words, Rusty comes off as a really tough guy, but he loves me, like I love him,
1989 wound up being a pretty big year for you guys. You won the Rookie of the Year title, and then he, of course, won the championship.
Right.
What did that mean to you personally?
It was euphoric. It was like living a dream. I knew that was my first year. I was just getting going. So excited to see Rusty win that championship. I mean, I know you got to remember that. I mean, Atlanta, wheel comes loose.
Yeah.
We think, he goes down a lap, and I'm in the pits accidentally with a Dodgers jacket on because I'm cold, I'm freezing. And a buddy of mine, Bones his name was, lived out in L.A. He gave me his Dodgers jacket, and all the videos I look at, it shows me in a Dodgers jacket, and everybody gives me crap about that because I'm a huge Cardinal fan. But yeah, 89 was that year where everybody said, "Now, who's this little brother of yours? What's his name?" That's Kenny. We call him Herman. But what was funny about that is a lot of the crew members remembered me from 1984 when I worked on the Levi Garrett team with Joe Ruttman. So I'll never forget, a lot of people said, damn, Herman, you come back as a race car driver. So a lot of people remembered me as a crew chief mechanic. And, Bobby Labonte was kind of the same, where he worked for Piedmont, Terry Labonte, the 44 car, and both of us were kid brothers, so to speak, Bobby Labonte and myself. So, yeah, 89 was a big year. I guess you could say 89 was the year that I accomplished more than I ever could have thought of, My God, going to Daytona for my first time was just, wow. It was like, although I was a crew chief there, getting on the racetrack, that's a whole different thing, right? Yeah. So, yeah, it was a very fun year.
Now, were you actually doing anything on Rusty's team, or were you just there to support him?
What year?
89. Because
because
you have been busy racing.
Yeah, I was busy racing, but I will say this: that's still a valid question because, 89, that was the whole Blue Max gang.
Yeah.
Barry Dotson, Harold Elliott. That was probably the funnest group in the history of NASCAR racing.
He's Rapp and all those guys, yeah.
I mean, those guys could do some partying. Oh. And so I would say that, the Blue Max team was always very supportive of what we had going on down in Lake Wiley because David Ift was my crew chief. If we needed a gear we didn't have, it's like, go over to Blue Max, Barry Dotson will let you borrow one. So, although it was a complete separate deal, the whole Blue Max team, they were supportive of me. Herman's racing because those guys still remembered me as a crew member. Yeah. And in 84, Jake Elder quit, and I became the damn crew chief. So that's something we glossed over there. But so everybody remembered me as a crew chief in 84. So when I came back here in 89, it's like, whoa, you're a race car driver.
Wow.
So a lot of those crew members were super good to me. So yeah, we were in cahoots, but we still did our own deal,
So 1989, Rusty is involved in the deal with Darrell during the Winston.
Yep.
and he wound up
Yes.
taking a lot of flack from a lot of people.
Lot.
How much of that reaction made its way to you in the Busch Series? Were they booing you because they were booing Rusty?
So this is incredible. I want to say this to you. I'm 58 years old right now, and you are the only person that has asked me that question, and I'm glad you asked.
Really?
Yes, I'm glad you asked me that because I can answer that. It is an image and a memory that will never leave me till the day I die. My brother Rusty is a tough guy, but he was so hurt over that deal. Because, when Rusty was racing Darrell going in turns 3 and 4, Rusty had no idea that what was going to happen later. He didn't realize the crews were going to get into this fight. Rusty didn't realize that everybody was going to hate him. So our shop, it was right behind the Charlotte Motor Speedway during that time. We left Lake Wiley, South Carolina. We're built. The next year we built this shop behind the Charlotte Motor Speedway. The crew had left that night on my, Busch team. They all went home, and Rusty said, "Come here, I want to talk to you." We went into fabrication shop, and we sat on a
The
set
night of the Winston?
afterwards.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
We sat on in the fabrication room. We sat on the steps. And here's what I remember. I remember Rusty looking at me and he said, "Herman," he said, "don't change." He said, "Keep being you." He goes, "Everybody loves you." He says, "Right now," he says, it's not that I want to cuss, but he says, "I can piss off people a hell of a lot easier than you can." I think it was at that time, see, I wished I was a little bit more like Rusty. Rusty's a tough guy. If Rusty knows what he wants and you're in his way, he's going to move you out of the way. Whether if you're right here, like he'll move you out of the way, like take his hands and move you out of the way because he knows where he's going. Me, I'm like, "Oh, hey, please," yeah. So Rusty wanted to let me know that what was the name of that race? The Winston?
The Winston.
Yeah. Want to make sure I got it right because I sometimes I get it confused with the Winston No Bull. That Winston was a pivotal point in Rusty's life. I think if he can answer for himself, but I love Rusty. I think it hurt Rusty immensely. I think because you got to remember at that time they're all having fun. They're just kicking ass, man. They're winning races, and it's a fun team. And Rusty's a great chassis man, and they were going at it. They were winning a lot of races, and when that happened, yes, I noticed. Here, I'll tell you what. I'll take a shortcut. I forgot his name, but the man that was in charge of Pontiac years later said, Herman, my nickname. He goes, you take a lot of abuse because of who your brother is. So same. I can relate with Bodine.
Yeah.
Todd.
Yeah. Me
Me and Todd are like little lovers. and Brett and Jeff are over here stirring a lot of shit up all the time, So, yeah, that was a difficult time. It was a very difficult time, and I felt bad for Rusty, because as Rusty says it, Darrell was wearing the black hat, Rusty was wearing the white hat, and right after that race, they switched hats. And maybe it was one of you that wrote that, but
yeah.
I remember, and you got to, I got to remind you guys, you two at that time were, the biggest thing we had. You two were the pinnacle of our media, so when we were talking to you two, it was like, damn, we made it. That was awesome.
1989, your rookie season, then 1990, you had some great runs and some top fives, but you weren't able to quite break into victory lane.
Right.
At the same time, Rusty is winning races and a championship.
Yep.
How much did you compare yourself to him, and how did you go about putting that into perspective?
So I can answer that beautifully. I never wanted to be. I never wanted to be my dad. I never wanted to be Mike, Rusty, or my mom or my uncle. I just wanted to do what they were doing. I wanted to race. So one thing that was instilled in us back in St. Louis is that you build your own race car. What was aggravating me then was that I couldn't get my car to do what I wanted it to do. So in '89, I had David Ift, and David had enough experience. He was, and then David Ift did not want to move from Lake Wiley up here. So it's not, David was never fired. He's still a great fan. David didn't want to continue being my crew chief because he didn't want to drive all the way up here. And you got to remember, at that time, David already had a whole career. He wasn't done by any means, but he had already been Cale Yarborough's crew chief, worked for MC Anderson. So I would say that in 1990, I was setting the chassis up. I was doing it all. So I was driving the race car, and I was the chassis man.
Wow.
It wasn't till later in '90, I told Rusty, I said, I need some help. Now, there were races we were competitive, and I'm not gonna skip ahead, but when I finally got my career going the way I wanted it to go was when we hired Steve Bird. Birdie was a great chassis man. So, but yeah, I spent 1990 trying to figure out exactly what I needed for a chassis setup. So did it bother me? There was nothing I was comparing with Rusty whatsoever. That wasn't even in my mind. I was frustrated. Because I remember battles at South Boston and Pulaski and Myrtle Beach and Hickory, and I remember battles. I battled but just didn't win. I don't know what my stats were back then, but I'm sure I was always in the top 6, 7. I remember going at it, with those guys.